Okay, well, what a weekend of rugby this weekend. Some unpredictable things happened, some very predictable things happened, but I'm just going to go through the games in chronological order, in the order they happened this weekend. So we're going to go from the beginning here. So let's get into Wales versus Ireland.
But despite that resilience, they've still conceded over 30 points.
So Ireland continue their powerhouse performance in the tournament. They won 31-7 against Wales. The only time they didn't look dominant really was like the first maybe 10 minutes of the second half, where the score was dominant, but they let Wales back into it a little bit. Overall, just a really, really good performance. I think the backs didn't play their best. They were probably like 7 out of 10 for what their potential is. But their forward pack was just, it was just superb. I'm just going through their pack in general in my head. And, you talk about Porter, Sheehan, Furlong, Ty Byrne, Joe McCarthy. You've got what I'd call like the dirty bastards in the back three, mainly because they do a lot of stuff off the ball, which is legal and I've not got a problem with. I like it a lot. But Omani, Josh van der Fleer, and Keelan Doris. That is, you could play any of those guys in a World 15 and you may get some arguments, but I think they're at least included within the conversation, right? They really stepped up today, all 8 of them in a big way. The scrum, absolute dominance for Ireland. The breakdown, dominance. The go forward, dominance. Line-outs, great. I think they lost their first line-out today in the entire tournament. So I don't think there's so much that can be said about them that they really are just really dominant from 1 to 8. And then you look at the replacements that they can bring on, right? And these guys could start in a lot of teams in the Six Nations. Jaeger, Healy, maybe not, bit old, but still absolute world class. James Ryan, although, he's had a bit of a hard time getting back into the international scene, he did have a card in the game. And I don't think he's been at his best, but he's coming back from injury and he looked, it's going to take some warm up. You got Jack Conan, Beelum as well at tight head. They've just got quality on quality, and they very much feel like South Africa in terms of having another world-class pack that they can bring on to keep the engine going. So really, really good. And then, we look at the back line, and again, all of these players that I'm going to be mentioning could be starting for any other team in the Six Nations. Gibson Park, probably the best scrum half. Jack Crowley, I don't think it was his best game, but I think the last 2 games that Jack Crowley's played in the Six Nations were absolutely superb. He played pretty good. I'm not saying he didn't play badly. He did play good. But yeah, and then the centre partnership, again, I had doubts about Henshaw just moving to outside centre, and he's fitted like a glove. Bundyaki is obviously Bundyaki, and he's probably the best inside centre in the tournament. And Robbie Henshaw, as I said, filled into that 13 shirt perfectly. Gary Ringrose, who's in my head probably the best 13 in the world, isn't even available for the team, and they don't look like they've lost a step. There's 2 players on the team that I'm not 100% sure about. Frowley came in at fullback, and I'm not 100% on him. I don't know. I don't know whether it was just because he didn't have enough ball in hand. He did some great kicks in terms of like territory and stuff, but I didn't see anything special out of him that really, like if a guy comes in for injury, like obviously Hugo Keenan's injured, you would expect that, they want to put forward their best effort and maybe put their hand up to fill in that 15 shirt. Don't know if Frowley really did that today. And Nash on the wing as well. I love James Lowe. He's world class. Again, could make a lot of World 15s. But Nash, on my eyes, a bit of a weakness. I'm not 100% sure about him. And I feel like he's only there because Mac Hansen isn't available. So from start to finish, Ireland were dominant. And I think the story in the first half was showing the differences in what rugby union is to rugby league. You get dominance in a scrum, it automatically makes it so that any knock-on, whether it's yours or the opposition's, turns into a penalty and turns into 30 yards of territory. And that was a huge difference between the 2 teams. Using that as a pivot point to talk about Wales and their pack, God, that tight head for Wales was so bad. I'm going to try and put up a little graphic on this video. His body positioning throughout all the scrums was just all off. His back was shaped curved. His legs were like far apart. I'm going to show you now a graphic of a position that's much better. Notice that the hips are back, the back is straight, and the legs are in a position where you're going to get a good drive. I don't know. I don't know how you can mess up a positioning in a scrum that badly. And if you go back and watch the tape, you know, it's fairly obvious. He got subbed off in the second half. His replacement came on, and there was a world of difference in terms of scrummaging. It was no longer just penalty city for Ireland, and they actually started to look a bit more competitive. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of the other stuff, why Ireland won. Wales seem to do very well when the game is chaos. They're very young, they're fit, they can get around the pitch pretty quickly, very, very active. But if things kind of settle down and they kind of turn into, you know, fundamentals, tight play, rucks, mauls, territory, they just don't seem to have the team cohesion at the moment to really kind of get themselves over the line. In the Scotland game, they were allowed to come back because the game opened up for them, everything broke loose. In the England game, that never happened. It's just both teams just played terribly, and that's why the score was so tight. And then in this game, for the 5 or 10 minutes where the game was loose, they scored a try. But then Ireland were just so professional. They really settled everything down. They slowed the game down. They played the game they wanted to, started playing power possession rugby again. And any hope that Wales had of coming in to win the game was basically just neutralised because of that. So this was two teams in very different positions and stages of development. You've got Ireland that have been building this plan for this team for many, many years, and it shows. It's a plan that's obviously worked incredibly well, and they are really the team to beat. And I'm going to be going to watch Ireland-England in 2 weeks' time, and I just hope England make it a game for at least like 30 minutes. I mean, they look strong. If I'm England, and if I'm looking for somewhere to attack Ireland, I don't even know. You're going to have to do something that you haven't shown on tape before. You're going to have to create some more moves off set pieces, off first phase. You're going to somehow have to win the physical battle, which seems like it's an impossibility. I mean, from 1 to 15, Ireland are just big. Like, there's no small player on the team. You could argue Gibson Park, but I've never really seen him being dominated in contact. Blitz defense doesn't particularly work. Crowley's playing with a lot of confidence. And blitz defense as well also doesn't work against Ireland because they've just got a power running style where the forwards would just keep hitting the same area of the pitch over and over again. I don't know what the tactic is to beat Ireland other than playing them at their own game. They seem very much to be like New Zealand, where you got to play them at their own game to beat them, and that's your only chance of doing it. And I don't think England have got that. And Wales certainly didn't have that today. There was a card that happened for Ireland in terms of, I think it was like grabbing onto a man in the maul. I thought it was a 50-50 call. I wasn't 100% convinced it should have been given. And I thought this is nice. This is an opportunity for Wales to get back into the game. But again, Ireland just showed their dominance in both attack and defence. They looked like they didn't lose a man. They were all over the place, stifling defence. They obviously had a game plan for it. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know where the weakness in this Ireland team is. Wales, on the other hand, God, I think these players just need to play together for a little bit longer. I'm not sure on Costello at 10. I'm not his biggest fan. But then again, I don't think the replacement's great for them either. I think the front row that came on in the second half should be starting. The scrummaging was so much better. I like Wainwright as a player, but he didn't really do much today. Their centre partnership's great. It just feels like all these pieces just need to learn how to play with each other a little bit more. There's not much more that you can say. That they're a team in development. They've got a ways to go. They've got a lot of internal drama with their own rugby organisation, and hopefully that gets ironed out soon. But at least you've got young guys that are coming in and they're showing potential. This was not the day to show that potential, but they have shown it in the Scotland game, and they at least competed in the England game. So I'm hoping for Wales that they can learn something from this. Sometimes an absolute thrashing can make you feel like, well, we've hit rock bottom. So what else is there? What else can happen to us? We might as well play freely. And yeah, the final note I had here is that even when Ireland aren't playing their absolute best, they just dominate the scoreboard, which I think is always a sign of a really, really good team. So that's enough of that game. I don't think there's too much more analysis to be made of that. As I said, very, very, very nervous for Ireland-England in 2 weeks' time. without further ado, speaking of England, let's talk about England-Scotland.
To have their moment to celebrate, Finn Russell kicks it into the stands, and Scotland have done it.
So this game was great. I thought it was a really fun game. It was two teams that were willing to play. I think the reason that it was so exciting and full of so much energy is because England came with an attitude of trying to outrun Scotland, run them off the park, blitz defence, play possession-style rugby. I did see that in the selection of George Furbank with Freddie Stewart. I felt like that selection had a lot of parallels for when Marcus Smith was picked at fullback instead of Freddie Stewart in the Fiji game in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. It screamed to me that England wanted to control possession. They wanted to hold on to the ball. They wanted to attack because they did not want to be kicking the ball constantly back to Scotland. Because if you remember last year's Six Nations, I think one of my biggest criticisms, and the channel wasn't set up then, so I didn't obviously post a video of it, but one of my biggest criticisms of that game and why England got beaten was because they were trying to play a domestic style rugby where they were playing with the lead, they were holding on to it and kicking away for territory and kicking possession away, and they ultimately had counter-attacks put on them. So that was, I think, one of Borthwick's first games in charge, and now we're a year later, and you can see a little bit of development of what he's trying to do. He's realised that doesn't work. We'll play possession. We're going to pick a pack that's, not real power runners, but great runners in there. Great for kind of very quick, get to breakdowns quickly, there to clear out, and really enables just a team that kind of holds on to possession. And it worked for a while. It was great. But it was kind of like how my prediction went. I did a short earlier that was released first thing on Saturday morning. Basically, I thought Scotland were going to win because I thought England were going to try and play a possession rugby. Yet they were trying to do it with a bunch of players that are coming in and haven't really played together very regularly. With the pack, Dan Cole has brought in Genge, who hasn't started for a while as well. The rest of the pack was pretty normal. There wasn't a huge amount of turnaround for that. But looking at the backs, we've got Danny Kerr coming in and starting for the first time in God knows how long. Ollie Lawrence has come back from injury. Tommy Freeman, who's probably on his fourth cap at this stage. And as I said, Furbank hasn't been in the England setup probably since the Eddie Jones era. So these are all people that haven't played together for a long time. And it showed up with the handling errors. You could see that there was a lot of complex moves and a complex movement in England's attack that sometimes didn't come off because it was a little bit too overly complex for a team that hadn't had a lot of caps together. And I think that's where the handling errors came from. And Scotland punished those handling errors. I'm thinking one in particular where one pass just bounced off of Furbank's chest and went straight into Van der Merwe's hands. He runs around three people and he scores. And that was really, I think, the difference between the two teams. You've got England making all those mistakes and Scotland in attack not making the same mistakes. These are all players that have all played together for a very long time. I'm saying like 2 or 3 years of consistency playing together. All the people that are starting at every shirt. The back line is pretty sorted with White, with Russell, Tuipolatu, sorry I pronounced his name wrong, Hugh Jones, who I thought had a great game as well, Van der Merwe, obviously man of the match and hat-trick scorer, Kinghorn coming back in at fullback after his move to Toulouse as well. I can't remember who's on the other wing, which is bad. But the reality of what I'm trying to tell you is that these guys start for England. They start for Scotland regularly. Same with the pack as well. So much cohesion in there. And that was really the difference. To me, they made less mistakes. And in a game that's with so much chaos, that was really the separating factor. So, fair play to Scotland. I have to say, as an England fan, even though we lost, it is exciting for the future. I thought Finn Smith came on, and he was really exciting at fly half. And I just want to talk about a bit of a key difference about when Finn Smith was on the pitch and when George Ford was on the pitch. If you go back and watch the game, when George Ford's on the pitch, England's attack is different. And they seem to trust their forwards with ball in hand to basically be the first phase receiver. And what they'll do is they'll look like they're crashing the ball up and they'll either crash it or they'll pass it. Kind of like a initial fly half. And then if they do pass it, the next receiver is George Ford, which I thought was really interesting. And I thought that was especially interesting when Finn Smith came on the pitch, because that kind of attacking setup went away, which I thought was fascinating. And I tried to think about why that was. And in my head, the reasoning for it was because I think that George Ford plays really well when he's got a bit of space and time. And if you're at international level, I think oppositions try to target him, they'll blitz defense him, and you kind of put defenders on the back foot if you have that kind of fake dummy run by a forward going forward first before passing it out to him, and it gives George Ford the space to make great decisions, do great kicks, make great passes. And I think it made a difference in England's attack, notwithstanding obviously the handling errors that really kind of thwarted them. But I did think England's attack looked a lot better because of it. Noticeably, as I said, when Finn Smith came on, that didn't have to be done. Finn Smith played very forward on the gain line. He was willing to run the ball back from kicks from table tennis that was happening regularly, which I thought was kind of cool. And I don't know. I mean, we're kind of... Borthwick's earned the trust of the RFU, I think, at this stage. He's probably earned the trust of the fans. I don't know why we just don't take this opportunity to maybe just test out Finn Smith. George Ford's great. I've got no complaints about him. And I think he's earned that starting position. But he is 30 years old. So really, like, he's not the future, right? I mean, he looks like a guy that probably may be able to have quite a long career, right? He's not known for his speed. He's known for his mental game more than anything else. So maybe he lasts well into like 36 or something like that. So maybe I'm an idiot for saying this, but I definitely feel like Finn Smith is the future. And those of you that have been watching him at Northampton, he's been sensational, right? I don't know. Against Ireland, maybe give him a chance. Maybe it's too much of a big stage. It's obviously Ireland. Ireland will just pummel the crap out of whoever plays at fly half. And playing someone who hasn't really played international rugby and putting him straight into that situation might be a bit unfair. So maybe we don't see Finn Smith the next game. But what we might see is George Ford starts against Ireland. Ireland then inevitably pummel us within the first 40 minutes and Finn Smith comes on later. The week after that, I would like to see Finn Smith maybe start if we have lost against Ireland convincingly. So, and I say that as though it's even a choice. It's definitely going to happen. Yeah, that's generally my thoughts on it. There's a lot of young talent coming in. Feo Weboso came on and he got a try. I mean, I was a big advocate of Feo Weboso. In my video where I said Henry Slade should be starting at outside centre for England, one of the last points I made is that he would be a great connection with Feo Weboso because they both played at Exeter and I think they've both been playing magnificently. I'm a fan of Elliot Daly. I think he's great. But again, I think it's the same argument that I have for George Ford. He's not the future. I think England would do themselves a lot more credit if they didn't start Daly and if they had Freeman on one wing and they had Feo Weboso on the other wing. I just think, you might as well just pull the ripcord and go for it. Why not? And I definitely feel like Feo Weboso showed that he belongs on an international pitch. He made some very grown-up decision-making in terms of defensive, being in the right place defensively, as well as also taking initiative in attack and attacking the line on the inside channel rather than from out on his wing. So that was really cool. A lot of hope for England in the future. And Scotland definitely deserve to win. I don't want that to not come across by that. I think they look great. And I'm really excited for Scotland to play Ireland as well. Given Scotland hopefully beat Italy next weekend and then hopefully they play Ireland and it's a really good matchup because if Scotland can win that, maybe they can win the tournament. I mean, I think that Scotland's probably got the best chance of beating Ireland at this stage in the tournament, and I don't think it's likely that they do, but hopefully they build for a cracking final weekend. I glazed over it a little bit earlier about the back row for England. I thought Underhill looked like the reincarnation of Neil Back. I thought he was magnificent. And you know what? I mean, I haven't mentioned it because people just kind of take it for granted now, the Messi of Scotland. But Finn Russell really, he's just sensational. He's just another level of fly half, really, isn't he? And I think one of the key things about Finn Russell that I think that sets him apart, yes, he's a lot of flair, and he does some crazy stuff like crossfield kicks that obviously worked in the game, and lots of looping passes and like breaking the line himself. But I think one of his biggest strengths that isn't talked about is he can try something, it fails horribly, but he doesn't let that affect his mentality. It doesn't affect his confidence. It doesn't stop him from trying it again. He can just kind of like throw that bad experience down the memory hole, and then if he sees the opportunity to do it again, he'll try it again. And that's a real quality that I don't think gets talked about him about enough. Obviously, all the crazy stuff that he can do is talked about on length, but I think his biggest strength is that he can make a mistake and he can like not let that affect his confidence at all. He will try it again and again and again and again until it works, because he sees it and he has the confidence that he sees the opportunity. I talked about crossfield kicks. He had a crossfield kick that just was straight out into touch and was bad. Literally like 5 or 10 minutes later, he has the crossfield kick to Van der Merwe, which ends up in a try. So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And I honestly, I don't think enough can be said about him. Van der Merwe as well. It would be bad not to mention him and how good he is. Again, such a powerful runner. I mean, and just his ability to turn, like, the guy is huge, and yet when he's at full tilt, he just has a curvature to his run where he can just outrun people. I think it was the try where Furbank knocked it on, the one I talked about earlier. When he caught it, he had Earl on his outside, and Earl is no slouch in defence, obviously. He just ran a circle around him and just was off to the races. It's his ability to keep speed while turning at that size is what really separates him. And yeah, boy, do I wish he was playing for my team. I mean, magnificent. And I think he's very close to breaking the Scottish try scoring record, which is insane, because I feel like we've at least, at a minimum, got 2 or 3 years left of him. Granted, touch wood, that he doesn't get injured. So yeah, really, really good. Tupolotto, I like him a lot. I don't think it was his best game. Hugh Jones probably took more of the spotlight. He played very, very well. His try especially was great. If you watch his line that he does, it's basically off a set piece. Tupolotto takes a great line. And then what Hugh Jones does is he changes his point of attack, and he literally, and this is a difficult decision to make off of a first phase, but he basically changes his line of attack. So he's off Tupolotto's shoulder. And from set piece, that's kind of a big no-no. You want to keep your width, because that's where the space is. But instead he thinks, you know what, I think I've got Henry Slade on the inside here. And he just goes through the inside. That was magnificent. I thought Hugh Jones had a fantastic game. Final bit about England. Ollie Lawrence. First of all, got to say that Ollie Lawrence has definitely earned a place in the England 12 shirt. I think he's played a lot better for Bath. I was never really convinced about him before the World Cup. I just feel like he wasn't quite at an international level. Then this year for Bath, I've been watching him intently, just seeing if he's improved. And he's dominant. I'm not just talking about a guy that's just a power runner. I think his defensive strategy, his pace of getting around the pitch, in terms of being a team player, all of that has massively improved for Bath. And I thought he earned that starting spot for 12 for England. I don't know whether he came back from the injury and therefore he's a bit rusty, but he was guilty of at least 2 or 3 of the knock-ons in attack for England. And there was a couple of times he got caught flat-footed. I talk about the Hugh Jones try there. I felt like he got stepped in a little bit with Ollie Slade. I think there was an equal blame on that play for why that try happened. I don't know. I don't know if he's the answer at inside centre. I don't know what to do with him next weekend. I keep saying that in terms of the next game. I'm not sure he's the guy, but I feel bad because he definitely has earned that place in the English shirt of how he's playing for Bath. And the final note that I will make, and I'll reiterate that I've already made throughout this video, is the difference between these two teams was, and I've written it here in big letters, we got it right here, it's execution. And I don't know if that's going to turn around backwards, and you get to see my horrible notes as well. I don't know if that, but the big difference between these two teams was execution. The Scotland, with the small amount of opportunities they got, they always came away with points. England looked dominant, had the territory dominance, never managed to put it away. So, yeah, that's it, really. That was the difference between the two teams. And as I said, Scotland, they are going to be playing Italy next weekend. And I think that could be a better game than people think it's going to be. And then England are obviously playing Ireland. And as I said, very, very nervous for that. But we'll talk about that closer to the time. On to the final game of the weekend. And this one hurts.
And by the thickness of an upright, France have got themselves a draw.
So, France-Italy. Now, I made a prediction in a short earlier today that Italy would win the game by 3 points. And boy, did they come close. I was so certain of this fact that I actually put a £5 accumulator bet on Ireland to win their game against Wales, Scotland to beat England, and Italy to beat France. I put £5 down. I think the returns on that would have been somewhere in the range of like 180 quid. So, let's start from the end and work back to the front. I got to be honest with you, that penalty at the end was absolute horse ball. Without swearing, you know what I'm trying to get at. The ball falls off the tee. France charge it down, which they're not allowed to do on a penalty, and the clock doesn't get reset. Now, I'd love to hear your opinion of this in the comments. My personal opinion is that the moment that France tried to charge that ball down, because they're not allowed to on a penalty kick, they should have reset the clock. Now, I don't know if this is inexperience of the referee, and I don't want to say that, I don't want to put it on him, because I thought Christoph Ridley actually had a magnificent game, considering this is his first Six Nations game. I thought he was consistent. Maybe one or two decisions I would have disagreed with, that being one of them. But I think Christoph Ridley did have a magnificent game, bossing this game and keeping it all in front of him. Very consistent for the most part. I think he had a good handle on the scrum and what was going on there, which is very rare for referees. And I think he had an excellent Six Nations debut as a referee. But I can't help but thinking maybe this was just a mess up in his part. I don't know. Maybe I'm blinded because of my accumulator bet that I had. I'd love to know what your comments are. Please put them in the comments section. We can have a conversation about it. But I'll be honest with you. If Jalabert doesn't get injured, if Dante doesn't get his red card, there's no way that my prediction would have been right. So, and I couldn't have predicted those things. So in a way, I've lost, you know, without even getting close. Because if those two things don't happen, which are complete, you know, they're two completely random things that you could never have predicted. If those wouldn't have happened, France would have won. There's no question in my mind. But the reason that I had such a ballsy prediction of Italy winning today is because France, to me, seem to... They seem to be missing a little je ne sais quoi in attack. I don't know. You could see it during the first half, and I noticed it myself, that they just couldn't get over the last 5 meters. They did very well when there was chaos happening all around them. And if you look, actually, when France were looking so dominant in the first half, a lot of it was because they were capitalising on Italy's mistakes. Italy were playing in their own 22 a lot. Sometimes they kick it a bit too far. And they have those players to really take advantage of when the play breaks down, when, you know, there's an advantage to be taken care of, an advantage to be taken because the play breaks down and the space opens up for them. Jalabert, excellent in that. You know, their centre partnership, Fiku, Dante, their wingers, all of their players are built to basically take advantage of chaos. And I almost feel like Dupont is that element of chaos that they need in attack for when the play goes stale, that gives them the chaos they need to get over the gain line. And I'm sorry, but Luku is just not that guy. He's a very, very serviceable scrum half. I think my biggest comp for Luku for me is probably Danny Kerr, who has almost now won 100 caps for England. So he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not an X factor. And I think you could really see that France would turn the ball over. They would then, you know, everyone would get very excited. The stadium could start going mental. But then Italy's in magnificent defence, and it has to be said it was magnificent, held tight, slows the ball down at the 5 metre, and then that would be the point where Dupont would either somehow fish a ball out from the middle of a ruck within half a second, or he would get the ball out and he would recognise something that no one else would recognise, aka like a cross-field kick or a backwards behind the back pass that would just open up space for somebody. And they just didn't have that, and they really miss it, and way more than I thought they would. I mean, I honestly thought France would probably be the winners of this tournament at the beginning of it. I'll hold my hands up with that prediction that I made and be honest with it. But man, they just look like they're just a bit incoherent without him. And it only got worse when Jalabert got injured, and it got even worse after that when Dante got his red card, which I thought was fully justified. Italy, on the other hand, the reason that I thought that they could take advantage of that is because even though they got trounced on the scoreline against Ireland, this is going to sound really stupid saying this, but even though the score was 36-0, I don't think they played badly. I mean, they look cohesive in attack, they look cohesive in defence, they had a game plan, they don't look like lost at sea. And against England, you know, maybe they should have won that game, to be honest. Obviously, with Ireland, though, they're just the powerhouse that they are, and that's why it was 36-0. You look at the scoreboard, then, you know, it looks like they absolutely trounced them, which they did, and there would be no positives for Italy, which is not true. I really like Garbisi. I think at the end of the tournament, I might do a Rugby Illuminati, 15, which I don't think would necessarily be, like, the best 15 in the tournament, but it would be a 15 of players that, you know, for me, I really, really like. Garbisi would be the 10 for that. He's magnificent. He's so quick, and his acceleration is so fast that he can take the ball standing still. And while he's taking the ball standing still from a ruck, he can either decide that he's going to accelerate through the gap because he's just got that acceleration, or he can pass it wide, or he can kick it. His speed really gives him an extra second that other fly halves don't have in their decision-making process. I think he's marvellous to watch. He's definitely my favourite fly half to watch at the moment. Please, I don't want anybody coming into my comments section like you have going, well, but he's not the better. Shut the f*** up. No one cares. I'm saying Garbisi's my favourite player to watch, not the best player, you dumbass. Anyway, as I've said as well, Italy's defence was magnificent. I mean, there were so many opportunities that they could have broken, and they just held together. More defence was great. The scrum as well. I mean, they won a lot of penalties. And granted, I will say that it was probably because it was France's decision not to put their... They decided to go with 7 men in the scrum because then they could have someone out in the centres as a defensive capability. And I think that led to a lot of the reason why they got so penalised at the scrum in the second half. But yeah, I just felt like Italy could do it. And I believed it so much that I made my prediction earlier today, and I also made that accumulator. So yeah, I mean, a lot of positives for Italy, and man, I'm just sad for Italy and my bet that I feel like that last decision was not ruled correctly. But again, please tell me I'm wrong. I think I might have tunnel vision because of what it meant to me. So let me know your thoughts. Jalabert is obviously injured now. Ramos at 10, I don't think really kind of cuts the mustard for me. I know he's been playing 10 for Toulouse. I still don't think he looks that inspired at club level. He needs some help a lot in terms of creativity. He seems very sort of like a bog standard 10 at that level. I'm not sure about him playing 10 for France. This could really be a chance for Antoine Hustoy, I think, to come in if Jalabert is injured. I like him a lot. He's basically... For those of you who don't know, Antoine Hustoy plays for La Rochelle. He very much plays like Ronan O'Gara, who is obviously the head coach. And I think he could offer France a little bit more control, which might work a little bit better with a lack of creativity that they have at the moment. Maybe kind of take your foot off the accelerator in terms of what you're trying to do creatively and maximize other elements of your team that are really, really good in terms of playing for territory, set piece, probably one of the best packs in the world. Maybe that's a different direction that they'd like to go in. And if Jalabert is injured, I would like to see France do that and give him a chance rather than play Ramos at 10. It's uninspiring for me. I don't think it's a great decision for them. Tuolangi seems to be another superstar in the making. Yes, the obvious stuff that you could see was line breaks that he made, which is obviously very typical Tuolangi. But he's 19, he's got a full career ahead of him, and if he doesn't get injured, then yeah, there's a huge potential there. What you don't see is that I think in the scrum he probably offers a lot, and he also can act as a decoy runner when he's playing second row, which is huge. I mean, the only other person that I can think of that can do that is Will Skelton, and that makes a huge difference. That you can take something that was of a typical like of another position, like a number 8, and you can have that in your team in another position as well. Another example of what I'm kind of talking about here is that Jonathan Dante is excellent in defence, like a jackal, and he can do what a 7 does. And Olivion, who is a very, very good player, who isn't necessarily the best jackler in the world, means that he doesn't have to do it as much because there's other players in the team that can do it. And I think that's what Tuolangi can do for France by playing second row. He can act as that superpower runner in situations where maybe you can use other people's skill sets, if that makes sense. Not 100% sure it does. But yeah, no, they were robbed, I think. That's my opinion. And France, they've got a lot of sorting out to do. I think they can solve a lot of their issues if they just decide that they start Hastoy, change the game plan. This isn't working for you at the moment. You cannot play the same style of rugby that you're playing at the moment without Dupont. It doesn't work, and we're seeing it time and time again. We've seen it 3 games in a row now. So yeah, I mean, you lost your first game. You probably should have lost both games since. I think you've got a lot of food for thought if you're France right now, and you are going to be playing more games. So you got to try something else if you're France. But that's it for me this week. It was a fun weekend of games, I'll be real. Some things that were very predictable, some things that weren't predictable. And it sets up nicely for the next round. It'll be very, very interesting, for sure. I think winner is pretty much sorted at this point, but the other places are still up for grabs, and there's a lot of interesting questions for a lot of the teams. That's it for me. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you later.